Okay, Rishus the Rav and the wonderful Kehillah that's hosting this tonight, this evening. And with great, tremendous gratitude for everybody who's taking out of their precious time to join us. We're going to attempt together, with the short while that we have with Hashem's help, to try to do a little bit of hachana to prepare for the day that is upon us, the day of Tisha B'Av. And because Jews are a hopeful people, and it's possible that the essence of our national spirit is one of hope, and we never give up, and we live every single day, we wait every day. Today might be the day that the whole world will be rectified. It's impossible to prepare for Tisha B'Av in the proper way without also preparing for the day that we hope Tisha B'Av will be, which is going to be the greatest yantiv there is. Karolai Moed. We don't say Tachmun on Tisha B'Av. The day is a holiday. It's a Moed. It is a yantiv waiting to happen. The tzaddikim teach that Mashiach's spirit energy is born on Tisha B'Av. So anytime we're preparing for Tisha B'Av, we're not just preparing for the morning aspect, we're preparing for the celebratory aspect as well. But the truth is that it's really two sides of one coin. If you look at the papers that you hopefully have in front of you, tonight we're going to take a look at really two fundamental questions. We're going to cover lots of different concepts, and we'll take a little bit of a thought journey together. But the fundamental question as it relates to Tisha B'Av and our approach is the first bullet point: what are we really mourning over? It's incredibly difficult to mourn the loss of something if we don't know the preciousness of that thing. There are millions and millions and millions of people who die, not millions, but many, many hundreds of thousands of people who die every day. And it's tragic and it's sad. And as Jews, we pray and dream and envision a world where Macha Hashem Dima Me'al Kol Panim, Hashem will wipe the tears off of every face, but it hits different when it's someone you know, and the closer it is, Lo Aleinu, should ever hear from such things, the deeper the mourning is. So if the Beis HaMikdash is something that's such a distant concept to us, where we don't actually feel that it's something precious, or we don't appreciate the preciousness, it's going to be extraordinarily difficult to mourn and to feel that loss. And by the same token, because the flip side of mourning is yearning, is appreciating, is celebrating. So preparing ourselves for the Tisha B'Av that we hope will be, which is a Tisha B'Av of celebration and a Tisha B'Av of returning to our heart and our soul to Yerushalayim, our Kodesh, we have to appreciate what is it? What did we have? What did we lose? What is the Beis HaMikdash? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to you today? And the second question is a question begged by the famous Gemara that all of us are familiar with, that the primary reason that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed was as a result of sinas chinam, baseless hatred, distinction, divergence between different factions within Klal Yisrael. And the fighting between them what caused the destruction, and the question, of course, is why? What does one thing have to do with the other? There are many terrible things, presumably, that could have triggered the cataclysmic destruction and the exile of the Jewish nation now for almost 2,000 years. Why baseless hatred? What's the kesher? What's the connection? So in order to address something as fundamental as this, the Beis HaMikdash, we really have to go all the way back to the beginning, which is the very beginning of everything. Which is the first source, which all of us know, Bereshis bara Elikim es hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz. In the beginning of God's creating heaven and earth, and the Pesukim continue, Va'aretz ha'yisayu b'vayu, but just taken as a pasuk in and of itself, without Rashi's commentary, which I just sort of spoke out, Bereshis bara, in the beginning, Bara Elokim es hashamayim v'es haaretz. God created. That's a simpler way of reading the pasuk. It's not as accurate in context, but for now. Bereshis bara. In the beginning, bara. God created. Just look at those first two words. Bereshis bara. The word Bereshis connotes a time prior to an event that's then reflected in the second word, which is the word bara. Something happened, something manifest, something changed, fundamentally. Those two words are two realms. Because in as much as the word bara refers to the creation of something, Bereshis is that which is prior to the creation of everything that we see around us. And the Zohar Kadosh picks up on this. Take a look in the second source in Sefer Tzniusa, where the Zohar Kadosh, in Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's classic, enigmatic, cryptic way, takes these two words and builds a whole universe out of them. Says the Zohar Kadosh, Bereshis Maimer. The word Bereshis is reflective of a Maimer, which we can translate as an utterance, a completed thing, a statement, with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Maimer, Bereshis. There's a certain totality in the experience referred to in that first word, Bereshis. Once you come to the second word, bara, which most people haven't realized and recognized because we don't reflect so deeply on our Torah, but if we do, we would realize that actually the second word in the Torah, bara, is exactly half of the first word in the Torah, Bereshis. It's the same three first letters of the word Bereshis that show up again as the second word, bara, which in context of Bereshis referring to Maimer, to something full, Memela means, as the Zohar Kadosh continues and tells us, bara chatzi Maimer. That next word, bara, which is itself the first three letters of the word Bereshis, exactly half of a six-letter word, is called chatzi Maimer. It's called half of a thing. Says the Zohar Kadosh, Av uben. These two words are like father, parent, and child. Av and ben. And then the Zohar closes it out, stim v'galia. A concealed, hidden realm, stim, and galia, a revealed realm. Stim v'galia. Concealed and revealed. Okay, so we have to think right now, it's a cryptic little sentence, huge, whole world opens up. It's the first two words in the Torah, like we haven't done anything. It's just Bereshis bara. It doesn't get simpler than that. Says the Zohar, wait a second, a lot's going on here. Maimer and chatzi Maimer. Av and ben, father and child. Stim, a hidden world, and Galia, a world of revelation. Okay, we're going to come back to this. Right now, put it aside. We're going to come back and revisit this on the following page. Take a look at the third source, which comes from a remarkable sefer by the name of Ayeka. It's written by a very, very dear Rebbe of mine, Rabbi Sasson, Shlita. And he says like this on page 57. He says, B'svarim evur, it's explained in the Sifrei Kodesh and the holy works from the tzaddikim, the compassionate teachers who are revealing healing Torah to us, soul doctors. They said the following thing. Shechet Adam Arishan pagam davka b'chitzoniyusa. That the primordial sin of Adam and Chava in the Garden of Eden at the end of that Parsha Bereshis only blemished what's called chitzoniyusa, only the externality. It was a blemish on the outside. The loy b'pnimiyusai uvenishmasai. And not on their interiority, on the level of their soul. The soul stayed in its pristine, perfect, elevated form, began Eden Elyon, in the Garden of Eden. Which is a remarkable thing because, as we know, subsequent to the sin, Adam and Chava are banished from Gan Eden. By Yigarden, he cast them out. Says Rav Reuven Sasson, quoting the Svarim HaKadoshim, the Sifrei Pnimius, the interior works which reveal the interiority of the Torah, they say no. only b'chitzoniyusam, only the externality of Adam and Chava were banished from Gan Eden. But the interiority, their souls, the root of their neshamas, stayed b'Gan Eden ha'elyon, stayed in that place. Girish ha'adam imekayma hoya b'chitzoniyus. Adam and Chava's banishment from Gan Eden was only the chitzonius, was only on the outside, ach b'pnimius, but on the inside, nishara Adam b'mekayma ha'amiti v'ha'metukan. The human being remained in his true, rectified, whole state. Davar zeh hu ha'shoyesh v'ha'aruva l'kach she'yatzliach ha'adam l'sakin es ha'chitzonius. This reality of that interior root, of that core, of that essence, always maintaining its fundamental original form, is exactly what guarantees that even after there's a part of us that falls away, that gets banished, we will return. All hope is not lost. It cannot be lost because there's a part of us that still remains. And what's called for is to simply return to the part of us that was never banished from Gan Eden in the first place. What we need to do is to grab hold of the external, reveal the layers, as we're going to see, and to reconnect it to that concealed primary essence of what it means to be a Jew. Ki apnimius hametukenes, because that interiority of each and every one of our being, which is mitukenes, which is perfectly already rectified, doichekes ba'adam tamid, constantly compels us to growth. L'noya, to move, v'lchapes loisa, and to seek out that deeper part of us. V'lashuv u'lemamesh gam b'chitzonius as ha'or shemeir b'pnimius. To compel us to find a way to express externally what already exists internally. Adam and Chava are not banished from Gan Eden. Adam and Chava are still in Gan Eden. There's a part of them that is estranged from their essence. What's required then is not this hopeless clawing up these slick walls to somehow find a way to get back. It's just a matter of rebuilding the connection with that part of us that's already there. Turn over the side of the page. And here we see from the Medrash Tanchuma that it isn't just Adam and Chava. But the truth is that this dynamic is true for each and every one of us in this room and all of Klal Yisrael, b'chol makom she'hem. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, quoted in the Medrash Tanchuma, "Mai dechsiv oisig gedolos adei cheker neflois adei mispar." What does the pasuk in Eov and Job mean when it says oisig gedolos adei cheker, that Hashem does great things adei cheker that are inscrutable? Niflois adei mispar, innumerable miracles, wonders. What is this a reference to? Teid Alecha, says Rabbi Yochanan, each and every one of us need to know. Teid Alecha, we need to know this. And I want you to make note of that word, Teid Alecha. Know it. Das. Be aware. Shekol haneshama shahayu min Adam Rishon mishiyu ad soif kol ha'olam. All of the souls that emerge from Adam and all the souls that will be from now until the end of time, kula nivru b'sheishis and mevarashis, every single soul that would ever be, me and you, were born in the 6 days of creation, v'kulan b'Gan Eden. And all of those souls were in Gan Eden, perhaps in the mystical body, so to speak, of Adam Kadmon, of Adam Rishon, different approaches as to where exactly we were. But you and I also maintain that essential component, just like Adam and Chava, that is still in Gan Eden despite where the other part of us might have fallen or have been banished to. Each and every one of us has these two parts. Each and every one of us has the chitzonius, where many different difficult experiences and ups and downs, and sometimes slipping and falling and stumbling and challenges, difficulties, trying to strive for standards that we can't seem to reach, and many different forms of broken temples in our relationships and our own personal lives that occur along the journey of life. There's that part of us that's called the chitzonius. But at the very same time, just like it was true for Adam and Chava, the pneumius is untouched and it still resides in Gan Eden, absolutely pure, absolutely whole. A maimar shalim, a complete utterance before any of the noise. If we need to think in our own lives of when that might have been manifest most explicitly, we can think back to when we were little children. Because there's not any single person here with all of our various mistakes, which I'm sure that we're sitting in a very righteous, esteemed assemblage, but there's no tzaddik that was ever existed. Ein tzaddik b'aretz, who only did good and never sinned. Right? So all of us have our own lowliness and our own baggage, everybody. But at the same time, every single one of us was once a small little child. Innocent, flawless, blameless, pure. Every single one of us. The illusion is that we journey away from that. And that somehow we leave that behind and we turn into something else. Reminiscent of a very important pasuk that says, Asa elikim es ha'adam yashar. God creates the human being yashar with a certain degree of rectitude, a certain degree of clarity and cleanliness. And then as life goes on, and then we seek all kinds of different sophisticated calculations. The ego begins to rise, and our own different objectives and motivations cloud our mind, and things fall apart. But the truth is that little baby that you and me, every single one of us, no matter who we are, what age we are, what stage we are, what background we have, it makes no difference. We were all the same. We were all exactly the same. We were all absolutely pure. That does not go away. It just gets a little bit buried. And sadly, there becomes a disconnect between the person that we think we become and the essence of what we actually are. It says in Nefesh HaChaim, Rabbi Klein, in the first parak, in the first shiur of Nefesh HaChaim, parak Yud Tes 19. The tzaddik takes a look at Yaakov Avinu having that fundamental dream. Our forefather, B'nai Yaakov, B'nai Yisrael, where Yaakov Avinu sees Inyan Mara Hasula Mutzav Artzav Rosh Megia Shamayma. He sees a ladder that is firmly implanted on the earth, but Rosh Megia Shamayma, but the top of that ladder reaches heavenward. Says the Nefesh HaChaim, take a look carefully at this pasuk. But we have to be sensitive to the nuance of the text. Loi nemar, loi amar mutzav ba'aretz. It doesn't say that the ladder was mutzav, established ba'aretz, on the land. That would have been more grammatically accurate. Sulam mutzav ba'aretz. You had a ladder that was established on the ground, and the rosh megia hashamayim. Right, and the top of the ladder is reaching heavenward, because you'd assume that that's where the ladder begins. Right, it's sort of like, what's the point of a ladder? Is to go from below to above. Because we are below. And the ladder is meant to bridge the gap between down here and up there. Says the Nefesh HaChaim, no. It says mutzav artzav. And that's first. It is implanted, not on the ground, but earthward, toward the ground. Amazing thing, amazing remez. Diuk, right? Mutzav artzav. The actual foundation of this ladder is not on the ground. The foundation of this ladder is in heaven. From heaven, it reaches earthward. What is the ladder? Of course, the ladder is Yaakov Avinu himself. The ladder is Yaakov Avinu recognizing what it means to be a Jew, what it means to be a human being on this planet, created in the Tselem Elokim, in the divine form, where all of the animals walk on all fours, with very, very slight exceptions. And here we are, we stand up, suspended, as it were, between heaven and earth. And Yaakov Avinu envisions this form of the human being standing upright as a ladder that bridges the gap from heaven to earth. But where does this ladder begin and where does this ladder end? This ladder does not begin on the ground and reach heavenward. Says the Nefesh HaChaim, Sula Mutzav, the way in which this ladder is instituted is that it is artsa. It is directed toward the ground. Umashma'ai, says the Nefesh HaChaim, what does that mean? Sheroish Iker. That the most important primary aspect of the ladder is the top of it, which is Iker Sharsha B'Shamayim Imam, which is rooted in the heavens above and Gan Eden Elyon. The pnimius, the essence of what it means to be a human. Rooted deep, deep, deep in our neshama. Umisham umishtalshal v'yored ad la'aretz higia. It is from there that the ladder begins to extend and descend slowly but surely until it reaches earthward. And says that Nefesh HaChaim, it's a symbol, it's a metaphor. V'hu hanishmas chaim shal adam. This is the symbol for the soul that resides within me, that resides within you, and you, and you, and all of us who are sitting here. This is our neshama. This ladder, as it were, is born out of the breath of Ayipach, the ap of Nishmas Chaim, of the divine that breathes the soul, so to speak, out of its mouth, kiviyachol. And from there it begins to go down, kisulam, like a ladder, shalshelas, and a chain. And that soul begins to descend from a place that's called Yechida, down to the realm of Chaya, down to the realm of Neshama, and then Ruach, and then Nefesh, and here we are standing in this world. But the tiniest little bit of what we actually are, stuffed into this small little body, and yet on a spiritual level, Ein Sof, Ein Sof, Ein Sof. And it doesn't begin here. It begins there. And this is the frayed tail, to end of that little rope down here. And here we deal with the fraying nature of this rope, which, like many ropes that might be very, very strong at the end, they begin to unravel a little bit. The men understand this with tzitzis, right? At the very end, it can sometimes fall apart, and kids like to fiddle with the tzitzis all the time and drives the parents crazy. But at the end, the tzitzis, right? So that's exactly the pasuk that we mentioned before. Asa Elokim esa Adam Yashar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu instituted the Jewish person Yashar, straight and unified. And then, like this rope, to which Klal Yisrael are likened, as the pasuk says, Yaakov Chevel Nachalasa. Yaakov Avinu is comparable, which is all of us, to a rope. At the very end, the rope begins to fray. And we deal with many different impulses inside of us, and we deal with a battle, and there are different aspects of our personalities, and what do we really want? Which is going to prevail? How can I battle with different tendencies within myself that are seeking to pull me into laziness, into anxiety, into anger, into jealousy, into the baser tendencies, and how do I rise? But the point that the Nefesh HaChaim is making is that aspect of the rope that frays is the very, very, very tail end of a rope that isn't rooted below and manifesting above. It is rooted above. And in the place where it's rooted above, going back to the earlier source, Adam and Chava never, ever left Gan Eden. And all of the root souls of every single human being that would ever be created was present in Gan Eden, and there's a part of them that gets banished, but the part that gets banished is never ever disconnected from the upper part. It's just that we forget. And we fall for the illusion. And we become estranged from our essential selves. We find in Chazal a very enigmatic element that not many people speak about. And it really should be spoken about more, because it's the most fundamental element if you really come to think of it. Where although we'll speak a lot about the Beis HaMikdash, especially this time of year, perhaps we speak even more about the Kodesh HaKodashim and the Aror and the Kruvim, what we don't often speak so much about is the element of the Even Shesiyah, the foundation stone. There are many reasons why the foundation stone is important. Primarily, as we're going to see in one of the later sources, that foundation stone is called the Even Shesiyah, the stone of outpouring. as a result of it being the place from which mimenu hushsas ha'olam, the whole entire world is derivative from that focal point, which I think makes it pretty central in a literal and metaphoric sense. It is literally the foundation stone, but it is also the earliest prototypical theme of any concept of a Beis HaMikdash or any point of essential holiness. Long before the Mishkan, long before the first Beis HaMikdash, second Beis HaMikdash, that foundation stone sits underneath that space for thousands of years, as we're going to learn. Or, say, not thousands, but shorter degree. But yes, many years, long before the much later developments of the temples that would be built at that spot, that place was already sanctified essentially because of the stone that sits under the ground. Where did that stone come from? What is that stone? Says the Pirkei Rabbi Elazar, Perek Lamed Hey. Vayeshev Yaakov l'lakei tesavanim. Yaakov Avinu's dream of the ladder, which we just learned, is perhaps the most fundamental vision that any of our avos had, because it literally belies the nature of what it means to be human and who we are. And it tells us what does it mean to be a ladder. It's absolutely critical and fundamental. Prior to that vision, Yaakov Avinu goes and he takes 12 stones and he puts the 12 stones all around his head and he lies down. And of course the 12 stones are reflective of the 12 Shvatim. And when he wakes up, what does he find? Those 12 stones have become unified. So Vayeshev Yaakov l'lakei tesavanim. Yaakov Avinu has the dream. He wakes up. He turns around to collect the stones. Umatzai sam kulam even achas. And Yaakov Avinu finds that the stones have become unified into one stone. V'samai sam atzeva b'seich hamakom. And he places them as a matzeva, as a mark, to be able to mark that spot. And oil came down from heaven in some form or another. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, "Vayutzak shemen al roisha," he poured shemen above the stone. But the Pirkei Rabbi Elazar is interpreting the word roisha to refer to the heavens. Oil came down from the heavens and was poured all over the stone. Ma'asa Kodesh Baruch Hu. What did a Kodesh Baruch Hu do? Nata regel yaminai, he lifted regel yaminai, so to speak. Obviously it's a metaphor. His right leg, God doesn't have a leg, God doesn't have sides, right? Regel yaminai, whatever that means. The tava even at imke tahaymus, and he stepped on this stone and he pushed it deep into the ground. Va'asa isa snifla aretz ka'adam sha'asa snifla kiba. Apparently, when a person is building an archway, I didn't know this until I was preparing this year, and I had to look up what the Pirkei Rabbi Elazar actually means. There is something called a keystone, where as you're building the different stones and trying to balance them as you get to the apex, right, and the balance is getting less and less stable. If you build it in such a way where you fit into that last empty space, a keystone, then it balances all of the different weight, right, around the sides, because they're all leaning on each other leaning on either side, which would fall over on their own. But you put a keystone in there, and that keystone is shaped in such a way where the grooves match up, and the whole thing stands. Says the Medrash, the Pirkei Rabbi Elazar, this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did with this stone. It became the stone upon which the entire existence hinges, which is a pretty terrifying thought. Right? Because we think that this world is pretty sturdy and stable, and it is just as unsturdy and unstable as two sides of an archway without a keystone in the middle. It just so happens to be that there is a component upon which literally everything that is fundamentally untenable otherwise is relying. That keystone of the entire reality is this Even Shesiyah. Lefikach nikra Even Shesiyah. And this is why it is called this Even Shesiyah, the stone of outpouring. Shemisham hu tabar haaretz. That is the navel, the belly button of the earth, the center of the earth, almost like the place of the umbilical cord which connects the fetus to the mother, through which all of the energy of the world flows. This stone is the keystone upon which all of reality relies. Shemisham utabra aretz, it is the umbilical cord which feeds the entire existence. Umisham nimtacha kala aretz, it is from there that the whole entire earth spread out and spreads out. Va'aleh heichal Hashem oimed, and that would become the place where the heichal Hashem, where the Kodesh HaKodashim, around which the Beis HaMikdash was built, would stand. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Va'even hazois asher samti matzei v'yeh beis elikim. Says Yaakov Avinu, this stone that I have instituted here shall one day become the foundation stone for the Beis HaMikdash. Even Shesiyah. This stone that sits right at the location where Yaakov Avinu has the dream about what it means to be human, which is a ladder that's not rooted on the ground and reaching heavenward, but that according to the Nefesh HaChaim is rooted heaven, in the heavens, and is earthward, right, reaches down here, which is representative of the two sides of the human identity. One which is called chisayis, the outside of the person, that part of Adam and Chava, that part of each and every one of us in our own lives and our own temptation and seduction by the snake and the eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is a archetypal myth, so to speak, meaning it shows up in each and every one of our lives, and all of us have eaten from that tree to one degree or another. There's that part of us that gets banished from Gan Eden, but there's the pneumius, that there's that place which never, ever, ever, ever left, is totally unsoiled, unsullied, is absolutely perfectly whole and well and complete, no matter what. At this location where Yaakov Avinu has this vision, there's this thing called the Even Shesiyah. Stones that were scattered become unified. The pasuk in Bereshis Paraklam Test, the next source tells us, Tisha B'Av, it's a reference to Yosef. It's Yaakov Avinu's bracha to Shevet, to Yosef. And it says, Tisha B'Av, Yosef's bow was firmly rooted, was in place. Yadav, and his arms were made out of like gold, like paws made out of gold. Miyedei Avir Yaakov, instituted Avir Yaakov by the mighty one of Yaakov, his father Hashem. Misham Roya Even Yisrael. Very cryptic pasuk. From there, he fosters Misham Roya, shepherds Even Yisrael, the stone of Yisrael. It's a strange thing. What stone? What are you talking about? What is Even Yisrael, the Jewish stone? What does this mean? Says the Targum Yonasan. The Targum Onkelos. Says, Min Kadam El Takifa de Yaakov. The words Midei Aver Yaakov, the second part of the pasuk, are a reference to God, who is the stronghold of Yaakov Avinu, di b'memrei, that with God's words, Zan, he supports. Look at the way that the Targum translates the word Even. He sees it as a conjugation of two words. Avahan uvnim. Fathers and children. Even is a conjugation of two words, Av and Ben. When you put Av and Ben together as a holistic whole, you have the word Even. Misham Raya, Even Yisrael, Avahan uvnim Zarel Yisrael. Turn back, if you will, one page. Just go back to the Zohar Kodesh that we began with. We began with the words Bereshis B'Av. The most appropriate words with which to begin. And we said that Bereshis B'Av, outside of the greater context of the narrative of all the 6 days of creation, if you just take a look at those two words, Bereshis B'Av, through the lens of the Zohar, which is telling us that Bereshis is called a Maimer, Bereshis is the totality, and Bara is Chatzi Maimer, Bara is half of that. The Zohar Kadosh tells us, with the related terms, that Bereshis is the concept of Av, of the Father, and Bara, interestingly enough in Aramaic, Bara is a son, right? Bara is Ben, is the child. Stim V'Galia. The Zohar tells us that Bereshis refers to a hidden realm, a realm that becomes concealed, a realm from which we become estranged. And Bara is Galia. Bara is the revealed world. The Sfarim HaKadoshim explain that in the context of Bereshis and Bara, held in contradistinction one to the other, it isn't simply that Bereshis is the Av, is the Father, and Bara is the Son, but in as much as the word Bereshis contains the word Bara, the word Bereshis is Father and Son as one, as together. Bereshis is the Ner Yisrael. Bereshis is the point of fundamental wholeness and oneness and connection. Bara is when life starts to happen. Bara is when we move away from Asa Lekim Es Ha'adam Yashar. The rope descends from heaven, and as it comes down closer and closer and closer to our experience of reality, the ends of the rope begin to fray. Be'ema bikshu cheshbonos rabim. And the chevel nachalasai, this rope of each and every one of our souls begins to unravel. And all of a sudden, we think that we become less whole because we go from Maimer Shalem to Chatzi Maimer. And we fall into a reality of Bara. There's a real world. This world is a dark place. This world is a difficult place. This world is a place of challenges. This world is a place of incredible angst. And a lack of fulfillment. There's no fulfillment in it. This world is a world of Bara. It is half of the Maimer Shalem. But there is a realm called Bereshis. And that realm called Bereshis is a place which may be concealed. It's the aspect of stim, it's hidden. But it's the place where the Father contains the Son, as it were. It's the place where long before the child emerges into this world, there's a unified entity of Bereshis, the whole picture, Bara, which is creation with all of its limitation and fragmentation and truncated nature, Chatzi Maimer, plays out beautifully over the other word, which is in the word Bereshis, which is the word Shis, which means 6, which is a reference to the 6,000 years of creation. And all the brokenness that is going to unfold, and all the healing that will unfold as a result of the brokenness, and what makes us human and not angelic, and therefore the crown and jewel of God's entire creation, is this, that we stumble, and this, that we fall, and this, that we falter and struggle. That's why we're called Yisrael. This world is a battle. That's how it's supposed to be. Shis, the 6,000 years, the 6 millennia, are meant to be millennia of bara, of chatzi maimer, of running into brick walls and relationships crumbling and mental health challenges and life with all of its complexity. That is what this world is. And there's not one single person in this room that doesn't have their story. Not one. I sit at this point with enough people to know. There's not one person who isn't carrying some kind of burden. Some is physical, chas v'shalom, some is emotional, some people could be financial, some people with difficulty raising children, some people with difficulty caring for parents, every single person at every single stage of life. That's what makes us human. Bara, bara, bara. Chatzi maimer, lack of fulfillment, difficulty, challenges, truncation, limitation. But it's all included in the shis. It's all included in a Kodesh Baruch Hu's unfolding of this master plan, which the word Bereshis, prior to bara, which signifies the creation of a physical world of limitation where everything falls apart, there is a realm of Bereshis. And you know something? In that realm is Av and Ben. In that realm, it's the Even Shesiyah. In that realm, Yaakov Avinu is able to have a dream of a ladder that isn't half a ladder, but is the whole entire ladder, which is recognized not as sitting on the ground reaching heavenward, but being rooted in the heavens and reaching to the ground, the realization that although the rope might fray at the bottom half, although Adam and Chava b'chitzayis might get kicked out of Gan Eden, but the upper half of that rope is absolutely unified still, is pristine, is precious, is perfect, and each and every one of us has access to that inside of ourselves. So Rabbi Nachman says in source number 9, L'Kutei Moharan Tarach Beis, that Tzaddik, commenting on this teaching from the Zohar Kadosh, tells us V'al Kain Emunah Nikra Yerushalayim. That is why Yerushalayim is called Emunah. Emunah is Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is Emunah. It is a place of faith. Faith is hope. That's what faith means. Emunah means hope. Faith means that I believe that this chaotic world has some meaningful structure that I might not be privy to and I might not grasp all the time. But my emunah means that I cannot live in a nihilistic consciousness where all hope is lost because I have emunah. So that means that there's a captain to the ship. There's a plan that's unfolding. I might not understand it. Emunah is hope. Hope for the world, hope for our inner world, hope for ourselves, hope for our nation, hope for all of existence. That's what emunah means. Says Rabbi Nachman, that hope is intended to be embodied by Yerushalayim HaBenuya, by the built-up city of Yerushalayim, Kir Shachubra Layachta, which is a city of connectivity, a city which, although the two elements of our lives might seem to divorce entirely, Yerushalayim is meant to be that point of connection, the place where heaven kisses earth. The neck, as it's described in shiur, according to the Mefarshim, that bridges the head and the heart. That keystone, which enables stability to maintain itself even when everything else looks like it's falling apart. Yerushalayim HaBenuya. Says Rabbi Nachman, Emunah, hope, is called Yerushalayim. You know why? Al Shem She'ikar Binyana Mi Bereshis. Because the energy in Yerushalayim HaBenuya, the energy in the air, the atmosphere, what it was as a city, what it did for each and every one of the members of Klal Yisrael, the Ro'el Regel, or any other time that a Jew came into the proximity of that holy mountain. Yerushalayim is saturated with the energy of Bereshis, with the totality of who each and every one of us really are. In that place, each and every member of Klal Yisrael, irrespective of how hopelessly their rope may look to have frayed, was immediately put back in touch with their higher self. Immediately. Yerushalayim is a conjugation of two words. Yira, Shalom. It is a world of yira, which means awe, fear, but the Svarim HaKadoshim translate as vision, spiritual clarity, awakening, awareness, of shalom. Of the way in which, although it looks like bara, the world was created, things happen in life, and everything is bara, chatzi mayim, where everything is limited, only a half fragmented, and it's hopeless. Yerushalayim is yira, shalom. It is a place where we can catch a glimpse of our essential wholeness. Built upon the Even Shesiyah, Av and Ben. That concealed reality of the point of our identity that is still in Gan Eden, that never, ever, ever, ever lived. Shubechinas Yira Shalom. Where things are still one. Let's turn the page over. Says the Holy Reb Kook in Aras HaTshuva, Perek Vav, Ois Beis, says that Tzaddik HaTshuva Hi Tamid Shriya B'Leiv. Tshuva is constantly already in the heart. Even at the moment that a person sins, tshuva was already there in the soul. The return was already present. It was hovering over that experience. Even while the person is literally sinning, there's a part of them that is already rooted in tshuva. Gnuza, hidden, stin. The concealed realm, and tshuva begins immediately sending forth its rays. And those rays show up as guilt, as shame, as a feeling of contentment, a disconcertion. A person feels something's off, something's wrong, I need to come back. Where does that come from? Tshuva. Where did tshuva come from? No, tshuva was already there. Tshuva is always already there. And those rays of tshuva will become revealed later on. When inside comes that feeling of regret that begins to call a person internally to tshuva, however, shortly after that experience or however long it takes, but there's a feeling that says, okay, come home. At the essence of all of reality, what keeps reality functioning, the essence of emunah, and therefore the essence of hope. The Even Shesiyah of reality, the keystone that holds up the instability of everything else, is tshuva. Mipnei, says Rav Kook, quoting Chazal, shehi kadma l'olam. Because tshuva preceded the creation of the world. Now, if the creation of the world is signified in the second word of the Torah, which is bara, then kadma la'olam would mean that tshuva is the energy of Bereshis. Which is an amazing thing. Because tshuva, therefore, isn't simply some feeling that I feel and something that I do that is born as a result of a person sinning, and then on a certain level, simple level, okay, person sinned, what can you do? So there's Hilchos Tshuva, you can go through the Rambam and Vidoy and Azivas Hendon and Kabbalah Asid and go through the whole process and can do Tshuva. It is so much deeper than that. Because what Tshuva actually is the opportunity not simply to return to Hashem, but Tshuva means to return to our higher selves. To climb up out of that portion of the rope that is frayed and fragmented, the 12 stones underneath Yaakov Avinu's head when he sleeps prior to having a vision of the ladder that seems rooted on the ground but reaches heavenward into a realm of Gan Eden and unity. To climb up and up and up and up, and to return to the essence of who we really are, which is that wholeness, the Yerushalayim, that aspect of Yerushalayim, which is still a Gan Eden, and still pristine and perfect and pure. V'terem shabalachet, before sin ever came into being, which is the second word in the Torah, bara, which is a realm of limitation, fragmentation, chatzi maimer, kfar muchenes hatshuva mimenu. Tshuva already existed. Al kain, therefore, says Rav Kook, ein davar batuach ba'olam kamei hatshuva. There is nothing as secure, there is nothing more hopeful in the world than tshuva. There's nothing more guaranteed, because tshuva is the essence of reality. It is the Even Shesiyah, the Av and the Ben. It is the place where the chatzi maimer and the maimer join hands. It is the place where all of reality is held up by that keystone of harmony, which is the guarantee that no matter how distant from Gan Eden the lower parts of us may become, we will yet rediscover that essential light of who we really are to illuminate all of those places and to find a way to reincorporate all of those into a higher journey. Zdoinas nepchu lemitzvos, lezchuyos. When a person does tshuva out of love, all the sins become mitzvahs. V'soy kol davar lashul l'tikun. And Rav Kook says, at the end of the day, everything will return to rectification. I'm going to skip the rest of that source for considerations of time. Take a look at source number 11. Where it says over here, Hischal HaKadosh Baruch Hu Livra Salam Even Shesiyah Tchila. It seems, because you can't have conflicting midrashim, in one place it says that it was the Even that HaKadosh Baruch Hu pushed into the ground after Yaakov Avinu sort of instituted it, but over here in the Medrash Tanchuma it would seem that the stone already existed prior, so maybe there were two halves of one stone. We need to think about what this means. But there was a stone which HaKadosh Baruch Hu instituted first, and from that stone the whole entire world extended. Why is it called that stone of outpouring, of outreaching, stretching out? Like we said, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the whole entire reality out of this stone, this word Bereshis, this Maimer Shalim, this Av and Ben, this Yerushalayim, that place of tshuva, kadma la'olam. Ubara Beis HaMikdash lamala, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu created on this physical location a Beis HaMikdash, a headquarters for that energy, for that lesson, for that reminder. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you've instituted for yourself machon l'shivtecha, a center for your shechina, for your dwelling. Says the Medrash Tanchuma, al tikre machon, don't read it a center for your dwelling, ella mechuvan. Add a letter vav. Mechuvan is a very different word than machon. Machon means a center. Mechuvan means a line. What does this mean, a line? So look back at the pasuk. Let's read the word like the Medrash is explaining to us. Mechuvan l'shivtecha. This, that Pa'alta Hashem, you've instituted a Beis HaMikdash, not machon l'shivtecha, a center for your dwelling, mechuvan l'shivtecha, aligned with your dwelling. What does that mean? Aligned with your dwelling. Which dwelling? You're talking about the Beis HaMikdash down here. What's mechuvan? Says the Medrash Tanchuma, keneged kisei hakavod. That place below is absolutely aligned, whatever this means, with the kisei hakavod, with God's throne of glory above. What do we know about the throne of glory? What comes out of the throne of glory? Whose face was etched upon the throne of glory? Chazal tell us the face of Yaakov Avinu. In what context do Chazal tell us that Yaakov Avinu's face was etched on the kisei hakavod? When Chazal tried to explain what the angels were doing running up and down the ladder. Say Chazal, they couldn't grasp this. They were running above to the kisei hakavod and seeing the face of Yaakov Avinu, mamish, angelic, in the most supernal of realms. And then they were coming down the ladder and seeing this little human being who presumably needed to use the bathroom like everybody else and put his pants on, like they say, not that they have pants then, one leg at a time. And like here's Yaakov below, and here's Yaakov above. Here's Yaakov Avinu, who's mamish Gan Eden, and here's Yaakov Avinu, this frayed rope of Yaakov, Chevel Nachalasis, somewhere down in the lower realms, and the angels couldn't figure this out. Say Chazal, all of the souls of the Jewish nation are etched out from underneath the kisei hakavod, represented in the unified face and persona of Yaakov Avinu. So let's put it all together. If tshuva is defined by Rav Kook, kadma la'olam comes prior as an energy to the word bara, because it's rooted in the word bereshis. And that word bereshis is the inyan of barashis. It's the place where the Av and the Ben come together, the Even Shesiyah. It's the place of Yerushalayim, the Maimer Shalim. It's the place of stim. It's the hidden realm of totality, of completeness in Gan Eden. And the kisei hakavod is mechuvan to that Even Shesiyah below. Then would it only make sense that tshuva and the kisei hakavod are deeply intertwined. Because if to return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu means really to return to our higher self, then what we're actually doing is returning to the kisei hakavod, meaning returning to that place where all of us are unified in this incredible paradise-oriented, pristine state. Unified in the face of Yaakov Avinu above, Yaakov Chevel Nachalaso, the top of that ladder that's mutzav artsa, that's instituted above and reaches down below. Okay, beautiful. Take a look at source number 12. Says the Gemara in Yuma, Amar Reb Levi, Gedoyla tshuva. Tshuva is great. Do you know why tshuva is so great? Shemagas ad kisei hakavod. Because tshuva reaches the throne of glory. If you look at the Mefarshim there, I've done this. Take a look. Nobody can figure out what this means. What does it mean, kisya kavod? Like what? So what? Like what does he mean to express here? But over here, it's brilliantly clear. Tshuva is great, shemagasav kisya kavod, because you know what tshuva means. Tshuva, that kadma la'olam. Tshuva means that I, from the standpoint of this chatzi maimer, of this limited reality and this broken, fragmented reality we call bara, this frayed end of the rope, from this place I can look beyond and I can catch a glimpse in privileged moments of my face on the kisei hakavod. And in that moment, I could recognize that irrespective of all of the parts of me that have been banished from one paradise or another, I can look back, and if I squint, I can still see that part of me that's in the kisei hakavod, gedolei tshuva, because that's what tshuva means, to return not only to Hashem, but to return to our essential selves. It says the Heilige Ma'arinayim, v'noidat's known, she'adas u'b'chinas Moshe. Das, awareness. Where did we come with that word das? You remember I said to make note of it? Just turn back the page for a second. Take a look at note 4. Rabbi Yochanan wanted to explain to us Teida Lecha. He wanted us to Teida. He wanted us to have this expanded consciousness and awareness that all of our souls were rooted in Gan Eden, and not only rooted in Gan Eden and then kicked out of Gan Eden, but that all of our collective root soul is still very much in Gan Eden. Unsullied, untainted, pure. He calls that das, Teida Lecha. Says the Ma'arinayim, Moshe Rabbeinu literally embodied that das, that awareness, that consciousness. That's the level upon which Moshe lived. As it says in the Zohar Kodesh, Moshe Rabbeinu's spirit unfolds over generation after generation, until 600,000 generations. Says the Ma'arinayim, this means not just that, what does it mean? Moshe's spirit flows forth over every generation. It means that you and me contain an aspect of Moshe Rabbeinu inside of us. What aspect of Moshe Rabbeinu is it? What part of us is Moshe oriented? It's the part of us that is able to glimpse this reality. A part of us that somehow, 2,000 years after wandering all around the world and experiencing shever after shever, brokenness after brokenness, collectively, individually, all of us, throughout all of our Gilgulim and in this Gilgul as a collective nation and as individuals, that no matter what we've been through, there's a part of us that still maintains this higher awareness. Now, that awareness comes upon us now only very, very, very infrequently. Very rarely, because usually we live in the lower self. And the reason why we so frequently live in the lower self, estranged from the higher self, and this is the point, is because we don't have a Beis HaMikdash. Because that is what the Beis HaMikdash was. The Beis HaMikdash was the center for tshuva. It was the place where the biggest sinner in the world came. They brought a few karbanas, and they were immediately reconnected with their source. That was the Beis HaMikdash. It was a place of kapara. It was the place with the tmidim, where the Tamid Shel Yom was mechaper on all the averos of the night, and the Tamid Shel Beit Arbayim was mechaper, atoned for all of the sins during the day. It was a place of absolute rectification, tshuva, realignment, reorientation, recalibration. It was a place where we can become, excuse the pun, rejuvenated, where we became Yidden again. We became Jews again in that place. We don't have that anymore. There's a part of us that's still Moshe-oriented, but it's so difficult. But when we do manage to access that Das Sheb'chinas Moshe, who b'chol nishmas Yisrael shem shishin ribo sharsha neshama 600,000 root souls, nimtzad emerges ki adas nimtzad b'chol echad v'echad yispashtus Moshe kol echad v'madrigosai. Every single one of us in that point that we're still able to salvage, that little pach shemen that after the whole Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, there's that little bit of oil that came down from heaven upon the Even Shesiyah. There's that little bit of a maintained connection with that part of us that's in Gan Eden, that part is called Moshe. You know what that Moshe is able to do? Take a look at the next source. Says Reb Nassan L'Likutei Halachos Hashkamas HaBoker Aleph Ois Gimel Ki Moshe, and again he's speaking about the Moshe Rabbeinu in me and you, which is that point of das, that point of teidalacha, that point that could be aware of the Gan Eden aspect of each and every one of us, the top of the ladder, that never, ever, ever, ever becomes estranged from its essence. Ki Moshe hayayachol zois. That point inside of us that's called Moshe is capable of limtza nekuda toiva afilu ba'pachash ba'chusin. That level of awareness, that point of clarity, which glimpses within our own lives our higher self, is able to find a point of goodness in the lowest human being on the planet. Moshe Rabbeinu could do this. As Rabbi Nachman says in multiple places, and that's why Moshe was always davening for Klal Yisrael. They did the Egel, idol worship is connected to Kol HaTorah is the worst thing in the world. What does Moshe Rabbeinu do? He says, knock them off, chas v'shalom. Moshe Rabbeinu stands up and he says, listen, erase me from your Torah if you're not going to forgive these people. What did he see in them? Bear with it. That God didn't see in them. God says, stand aside, I'll wipe them out. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, no. Lama yechra abcha ba'amecha. Turn the page. Why are you being angry at your nation? What do you mean, why? Why not? How not? What does Moshe see? What is he looking at? What is Moshe capable of being aware of from the standpoint of Moshe living in a consciousness of das, of teidalacha? And the answer is simple. Matzah toiv shebehem. Because Moshe Rabbeinu finds the good in someone else. Because Moshe Rabbeinu finds the good in himself. And in that place there is no evil. Because Moshe Rabbeinu is looking at the essence. Moshe Rabbeinu isn't looking at the chitzonius of Adam and Chava that got kicked out of Gan Eden. Moshe Rabbeinu looks and sees the essence of this person. He is able to look beyond the surface of whatever bad behavior might be manifesting and to take a look at the difficult emotions that person must be feeling, because usually hurt people. And it goes back and it's a result in deep, difficult experiences. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, these are not bad people. These are people who are struggling. These are hurting souls. Not wicked souls, hurting souls. It's a paradigm shift. Moshe Rabbeinu is capable of doing that because Moshe Rabbeinu is living in das. And das means to be aware of that Beis HaMikdash Yerushalayim energy. That tshuva energy, the realization that no matter what's going on the surface, tshuva is buried at the core of each and every one of us. Because brokenness only begins with the second word. But don't forget that there's a first word. And that first word is the totality of the essence. Moshe Rabbeinu is capable of seeing that. So the next source is very obvious. Well, Amar Rabbi Eliezer, so says Rabbi Eliezer, if that's the case, and this is what it means, das, Moshe Rabbeinu, so then Kol Adam Sheyesh Bo Deah, says the Gemara, whoever attains Deah, Ki'ilu Nivne Beis HaMikdash B'Yamim. It is as if the Beis HaMikdash was rebuilt in that person's life. Again, what's the connection? What does Deah have to do with the Beis HaMikdash? Once we understand that, like Rabbi Nachman says, the whole energy of Yerushalayim comes from the word Bereshis. The whole energy of the Beis HaMikdash, Even Shesiyah, Av and Ben, is the place where Bereshis and Bara dance. Where a person can lift up all of their brokenness, the frayed end of the rope, and bring it into connection, shine the light of the essence of our souls from Gan Eden to shine across all of the places, Tishtapechna Avnei Kodesh, like it says in Eicha, where we've been shattered like a stone into millions of pieces. But there's a unifying light. When a person has Deah, that person is out of exile. But because we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, it's extraordinarily difficult to get to that level. And that's what we're missing. And because we're not on that level, there's sinas chin. Because how could there be love? If we're all living out of our external selves and judging other people by their external selves. then there's no hope. So you understand, sinas chinam in the time of the Beis HaMikdash meant that although the Beis HaMikdash was standing, the people weren't getting it. It wasn't working. Because if the Beis HaMikdash is functioning, if the Even Shesiyah Av and Ben is a place where the 12 stones, the Shvatim, all become unified as one because it draws on a level of the Gan Eden, unified Yaakov Avinu, Sharish Nishmasam, Kisei HaKavod, how could Jews not respect each other? How could Jews not disagree, but with love? With respect? How could that happen? Memela, when there's a split, it means that we've lost the Beis HaMikdash. If to have das means it's like the Beis HaMikdash was rebuilt in our times, then it was the lack of das then that led to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And that's the aspect of fragmentation. This month is called Kodesh Av. Kodesh Av means that the whole energy of the month is drawing on the word Bereshis. It's that place where we can yearn to be able to re-access that part of ourselves that we may feel that we have no contact with Him. Av and Ben, it's Even. It's the place where we yearn to come back to our source, to our Father, to our Kisei HaKavod. And the way to do that, says the Chavos HaTalmidim, with this we come to an end. We're not going to leave out the last source, I'll just speak it out. Says the Chavos HaTalmidim, Ma'oid, Ma'oid, Hava Zehirim, Ba'avas Chadir. And he tells the students in his yeshiva, be very careful to love each other. Talmud ben Ashrei is a wealthy student shouldn't become proud but Ashrei because of what he has. Or Talmud ben Ani lo yeshafel be'enei atzmei ba'ani yusai, and the child of an impoverished person shouldn't feel any worse off because he doesn't have as much. What's the foundation for love? For avas chinam? Moshe Rabbeinu consciousness. Ki kulchem b'nei Hashem atem. Because you are all sons of God. Malachav hatahirim. Can you imagine this is how he spoke to his students? Imagine if our teachers would speak to our students this way. This is what he said. He said, you are all holy, pure angels asher ba'aretz atem. Your feet walk the earth, but you're holy angels. Every one of you. Now listen to these words. This will finish. Uvamida shetischavu yachad ze el ze ba'ava. To the extent that as a result of your Moshe Rabbeinu consciousness, seeing the holy angel in the other, seeing the top of the ladder in the other, seeing the part of each other that is still in Gan Eden, that no matter what behavior is exhibiting on the outside, it has nothing to do with the inside. As a result of your consciousness, uvamida shetischaber yachad ze el ze ba'ava, that you'll connect one to each other with love. Yachad, and you will bring your souls into proximity like the stones that became the Even Shesiyah. Lios achas mamish, to be actually one. Not achdus, pay lip service to it. Jews with different types of kippahs get together in the same room, they don't murder each other. Achdus. Not achdus. Achdus, the shirish, realizing you are one. Not that you can get together, but you are already one. And then the act of getting together and avas chinam is just revealing that fundamental truth. That's what achdus means. Achdus is something we create. Achdus is something we reveal. It's already there. So to that degree that you realize that you are achas mamesh, b'mida zu gam Hashem aleichem yischaber. In direct proportion with the degree to which you can see godliness in the other, God's presence will rest upon. And maybe you can say it's the same thing. Living in a consciousness of recognizing godliness in ourselves and in others is living in a world where God is not hidden. Is living in a world where the Beis HaMikdash is not as destroyed as it seems. Skip to the last source. Kol Abel al Yerushalayim, said the Gemara in Tainis, whoever mourns over Yerushalayim, meaning to say you can't mourn if you don't know what Yerushalayim is. So hopefully now we have a little bit of a better picture what that place used to be, what all of us are yearning for, to be reconnected to our innocence, to really, really feel self-love, which we struggle with so deeply in our generation. That's what Yerushalayim is. Anybody who mourns over that, says the Gemara, Zoicha v'roya b'simchasa. That person will merit to see Yerushalayim in its joy, but all the Hasidic Rebbes say, you have to put a comma in there. Whoever mourns over Yerushalayim, comma, zoche, comma. In that moment, they become refined. V'roya b'simchasa. And in that moment, they taste a little bit of that energy. Because they're already reminded of what a residual echo of what the Beis HaMikdash once was and what it can still be to Kol Mishi Yesh B'Idea, to anybody who taps into that wisdom and the realization that upon the Even Shesiyah stood the Aron, and inside the Aron, don't forget, are two very important things. Luchos, the whole Luchos, V'Shivrei Luchos, and the broken Luchos. Bereshis and Bara. Av and Ben, Stim, V'Galia. When we can live in that consciousness, when we can find godliness in the other, which begins, like Rabbi Nachman says in that source 282, by finding it in ourselves, then we can come back to Yerushalayim. Then a Kodesh Baruch Hu will manifest for us a center which will embody that consciousness. But if we think we're going to get the Beis HaMikdash by fighting each other tooth and nail on the streets of, wherever, as a result of, I want the Beis HaMikdash, but I really want the Beis HaMikdash, I want it this way, I want it that way, and we're tearing each other apart. None of us know what the Beis HaMikdash is, apparently, because that's not what the Beis HaMikdash is. The whole thing of the Beis HaMikdash is that place of wholeness, that place of tshuva, that place of humility, that place of yearning, that place of refinement, the Roya, Yerushalayim, where we can reconnect to our source. Hashem shall bless us. That we should contemplate these ideas, because it's only in learning like this. I apologize, I'm not like the story type of guy. Like if you thought you were coming to hear stories, I want to teach Torah. I'm sorry, I don't know so many stories. I don't like to share it, but I like getting into the. I think it's learning like this that can give us the ability to have a little bit of a more refined definition of what this thing is, Beis HaMikdash, Yerushalayim, what it means in an existential, theological sense. That then gives us pause to realize that that's a lot more relevant than I previously thought. I can relate to that. I wish there was that place where I could go and just become immediately reconnected to my Gan Eden self. I miss that. I miss that desperately, because I'm stuck in the last little tiny centimeter. You have centimeters here? Centimeters? That little centimeter of this frame, and I don't know what to make of my life anymore, because everything fell apart a long time ago. What I would give for one little sniff of the reach of the ketayres, for one little listening to the jingling of the bells at the bottom of the Kohen Gadol's robe, what I would give for just one moment, Bechatzres Hashem. Because that's really what we're looking for. In all the places that we look, that's what we're looking for. And instead of looking up, we look to this side and that side and backwards and down. And what we're looking for is that essential wholeness inside. Yerushalayim, that Maimer Shalim, that was prior to the bara where everything fell apart. Hashem shall bless us that we should be among those who are truly mourning, because we recognize the preciousness, and as a result, Zoicha, we should become refined, V'roya b'simchasa, and that we should become people who, like David HaMelech sings in Tehillim, Karva el nafshi ga'ala. Even if the whole nation might still be in a state of exile, each and every one of us, to the degree that we are capable, we can get das, and we can break out of exile on a personal level. We should be zeichet to see the binyan bayis shlishi, both in our personal, individual lives, as well as in the collective of the nation.
Yismach lei, embark Hashem. Yismach lei, embark Hashem. Nivridai rayon.